When the moon is high and glowing bright, something stirs in the shadows. Something with teeth. Tonight, I'm unleashing a pack of terrifying tales from Weekly Spooky's vault about werewolves, shapeshifters, and fur-covered horrors you'll wish had stayed in the dark. From small-town monsters to teenage terrors, these stories will make you think twice about going out on a full moon. So, grab your silver bullets and remember to make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app as the full moon fears begin right now.
Wolf Moon by Joe Salmo.
Daria looked up into the night. Was that a scream? She turned to her boyfriend of 3 years. His face was illuminated by the dancing flames of their campfire. The look in his eyes told her that he had heard it too. His hand subconsciously went to his belt, where he had a knife attached in a sheath. It was probably coyotes, Brandon said, reassuring her. Sometimes they can sound like babies yelling. That was no coyote. Wasn't there a car we passed up a little ways ago? Maybe something happened to them. We should check to see if they're okay, Daria said. I'm sure it's just a bunch of drunks having a good time. I haven't heard anything since, Brandon said, looking back towards the old logging road that traveled its way around the small lake where they were camping. We're in the woods. We're gonna hear things we aren't used to. That's half the reason we come out here, to experience new things, he said, and smiled at her. Do you need another beer? He asked. No, she said, sullenly, and stared into the darkness towards the sound she heard. She looked back at the flimsy tent and wondered what kind of protection it could actually offer if something did come into the camp tonight. It was her first time camping. She was having a hard time relaxing. Brandon, on the other hand, grew up in the woods and had no problem enjoying the outdoors. It was fine during the day, but once the darkness started to settle in, her anxiety started to rise. She knew somewhere inside that she was just being foolish, but he wouldn't listen to her. The full moon's light played off the trees and cast shadows just out of the firelight. She constantly found herself looking around, thinking she saw movement. Brandon said she was just nervous because it was her first time in the woods. He had told her that he'd camped here before and knew the area well. The fresh air was great, she had to admit, and the quiet was unbelievable. No hustle of the city, no loud cars cranking bass driving by, no fireworks or gunshots. You never really could tell. It felt like they were the only people in the world, until that other car drove up the road. Brandon said there were other spots to camp around the lake, but it wasn't a well-known area. She had tried to fish earlier, but grew bored after about an hour of trying. Brandon laughed at her for being impatient. She looked over at the folding table where they had some of their supplies sitting. Everything from pans and paper plates to utensils and even a tube of Pringles. The rest of the food had been packed away into a sealed container and put in the back of their SUV to keep the bears away. She looked up as she thought she had heard another scream. She turned back towards Brandon, but he'd fallen asleep in his camp chair. She stood and approached her boyfriend, who was lightly snoring. If tonight was any other drinking night, then he would sleep soundly through the entire night. She undid his belt and pulled the knife and its holder off and slid it into the front of her shorts. She grabbed a flashlight from the table and walked the little path up the logging road. She looked both ways on the road, the dirt illuminated by the full moon through the gap in the trees above. There was no movement or sound coming from either direction. She debated if she should check out the other camp. She wanted to make sure they were okay. It would give her peace of mind, as well as making sure they were all right. She couldn't bring herself to start walking down the road. She was afraid. She hated to admit it, though, even to herself. "I'm being silly," she said out loud and turned back towards her camp. The fire looked inviting from this far out in the cool night. She stumbled on a root as she entered the campsite, and it awoke Brandon. He rose from his chair. Are you ready for bed, babe?" he asked. "Yeah," she replied and poured the rest of her beer onto the fire to put it out. "That's a waste of beer," Brandon said and unzipped his pants. He started to piss on the fire. Daria headed to the tent, disgusted. Hey, babe, we should do it. It'd be fucking intense. Get it? Fucking intense?" Brandon said and burst out laughing. He turned around and saw her slip inside the tent. "No sense of humor," he said, zipping up. A few minutes later, Brandon was snoring next to Daria, wrapped up in his sleeping bag. If only she was that lucky, she thought as she watched the faint light from the moon dance in the shadows cast by the leaves. Every time the breeze kicked up, she thought it was something approaching her camp. There was no way she was going to sleep that night. She played with the idea of sleeping in the car. She might feel safer that way, as she looked at the knife she still carried. She slid her fingers across the edge of the blade to see how sharp it was. A thick trail of blood ran down her finger as she misjudged how hard to press. She stuck her finger in her mouth. A howl erupted out in the night. She didn't know wolves lived in these woods. She turned towards Brandon to see if he had heard it, but he was still snoring. She tried to place where the howl had come from, in her mind. She thought it came from the same area as the screams they thought they had heard earlier. "It's just my imagination," she whispered and tried to close her eyes. But she was filled with nervous energy. She thought about how if Brandon was awake, she would take him up on his offer, just to have the companionship at that moment. She thought about waking him up. She knew if she did, he would be pissed. Was that a twig snap? She sat up in the tent. It sounded really close to the tent. The hairs on her arms rose up and gave her goosebumps. She looked down at the knife and realized she was holding it as hard as she could. The handle was sticky from where she'd bled from the cut. Okay, that time it was definitely close to camp. She tapped Brandon on the shoulder. He could be as pissed as he wanted to be. She needed him right now. But he didn't stir. It was then that she saw the shadow pass over the tent. What the fuck was that? She wondered and poked Brandon harder. The large shadow stopped near the flaps of the tent and she could hear a sniffing sound. Fuck, it's a bear, she whispered and started to shake in fear. A low growl came from outside. A shadowy appendage rose in the darkness, and she could see claws of the beast. She punched Brandon in the face, and he woke up. "What the he started to say, but she put her hand over his mouth and pointed to the tent entrance. His eyes grew huge as he saw the shape in the moonlight. The sniffing continued. He reached down to his waist for the knife, but it wasn't there. The shadow moved toward Daria's side of the tent, and she practically leapt on top of Brandon. She saw the thin fabric stretch as the animal pushed against it with its face, still sniffing. She looked down at her hand. "Oh shit," she whispered and showed Brandon her bloody finger. He took the knife from her and rolled his eyes. He pulled his pants on as a growl came from behind them. The tent shook from the animal probing it. He grabbed her and pointed towards the flap on the tent as he handed her the car keys. She tried to protest, but he shook his head. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her limbs felt heavy, almost frozen. She wasn't sure she could make a run for it. The growling stopped, and all was silent for a moment. The shadow moved off the tent into the woods. They could hear footfalls of whatever it was. Brandon made his way to the zipper on the tent and undid it slowly. "Now," he said and opened the flap. She hesitated for just a moment, and he pushed her out of the tent, following right behind her. She scanned the campsite for whatever it was, but didn't see anything. A great howl came from behind the tent that made her move. She took off to the short trail towards the car in the darkness. She heard Brandon behind her. Oh shit, he said, and she turned around to see what he was talking about. A great black shape in the darkness charged after them, and she ran to the car and yanked the door open. She turned her head towards Brandon and saw him 15 feet from the car. The large black shape pounced with lightning speed and landed on his back, driving him to the ground. "No!" she screamed, and the beast looked up in her direction. Its yellow eyes glowed, reflecting the moonlight. She'd never seen a bear up close before, but she knew instantly that it wasn't a bear. "Close the door!" Brandon called out to her from under the beast, which had put a clawed hand down on the back of his head, driving his face into the ground. She yanked the door closed and plunged the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life and she turned on the headlights and threw the car into reverse. She lined the front of the car up with the camp so that she could see what was happening. The beast, she didn't know what else to call it, stood on its hind legs, like a human. Its face had a snout, like a dog's, and its body was covered in corded muscle and silvery black hair, shining in the moonlight. She beeped the horn several times. "Get the fuck off him!" she yelled at the werewolf. There was no other way to describe it. It was a goddamn werewolf. The beast roared and leapt onto the hood of the car with a metallic clang on impact, its snarling face a mere inch from the windshield. She watched as saliva dripped from its canines as long as a thumb. Tears streaked across her face, and she wiped her hand across her brow. Behind the werewolf, she could see Brandon getting to his knees in the headlights. She waved her hands around, trying to keep the creature's attention, its yellow eyes darting back and forth, watching her movements. Snarls escaped its mouth as it watched her. A clawed hand, so much like a human's, pounded on the glass, making tiny cracks in the windshield. Brandon darted around towards the passenger side of the SUV. The movement caught the werewolf's eye, and with inhuman speed it dove on top of Brandon. Daria watched as its clawed hand sunk into Brandon's back like a hot knife through butter. Blood began to seep from the wounds as Brandon screamed out in pain. So much like the screams she had heard earlier. Frantic, she looked around the front seat looking for anything to help, but she came up empty. "Go!" Brandon managed to say between screams. She didn't want to leave him here. She put the car in gear and backed it up a little. The headlights illuminated a grisly scene in front of her. Brandon was lying face down. His back was covered in blood. The werewolf still had its claws embedded in her boyfriend's back. She beeped the horn to get its attention. "Fuck you, Teen Wolf," she said, and floored it. The car struck the beast on the left hip, spinning it around as the car drove across the narrow dirt logging road and struck a tree. Smoke rose from the dented hood in the headlights. "Shit," she said, and looked in the rearview mirror. She saw Brandon lying there in the road, but she didn't see the beast. Maybe she'd taken it out. She tried to back the car up, but it was stuck. The tires spun in the ditch the front end had fallen into. Brandon moved an arm. He was still alive. She had to help him. She craned her neck around and saw no sign of the monster. She opened the car door and raced to her boyfriend. "Why didn't you go?" he asked between gurgles as blood escaped his mouth. She lifted the blue flannel shirt he was wearing and saw the hole in his back. She had expected a few puncture wounds, but this was a gaping hole. "I'm not leaving you behind," she said. "Can you get up?" "No, just go," he said. "I can't feel my legs." She looked at his injury again, and it suddenly became clear. The hole in his back was where his spine should have been. A good 9 inches of it was missing. She heard a snarl behind her, and she turned. The beast was backlit from the crashed car. She looked at its clawed hand. It held Brandon's spine. It approached her and swung it at her, striking her in the face with her boyfriend's backbone. She fell over backwards on the far side of Brandon, who screamed again. The beast stood on top of him and sniffed toward her. It was her blood that had brought the beast to their campsite, she thought. It snarled at her and put one hairy, clawed finger on the back of her boyfriend's neck, as if teasing her. The werewolf's intelligence was apparent in its cruel eyes from this close. Please, she begged, between sobs. Please leave us alone. The werewolf looked down at Brandon, then back at her, as if deciding who it wanted more. Leave him alone, you son of a bitch! She yelled out, and the werewolf sent her tumbling with a backhand slap. She rolled into a pine tree, and it knocked the wind out of her. She tried to get to her feet, but her body wouldn't yet respond. She heard a wet, snapping sound coming from the road, and she winced, knowing it came from her boyfriend. A moment later, she could finally move. She stood unsteadily, using the tree to help her up. The werewolf had its back to her as it snacked on Brandon, gnawing into his upper arm. Brandon wasn't screaming anymore. He had to be dead, she thought. She wiped her hair out of her face and took a step towards the monster. It didn't seem to notice her yet. 2 more steps and she watched in horror as the monster devoured the love of her life. Her fright started to fade miraculously, and a calm, it took over her. Cold and calculating, her mind thought of all the stories she'd heard about werewolves and how to kill them. There were no silver bullets, or silver anything around for that matter. She wondered if fire would kill it, but the campfire had gone out, and she doubted the werewolf would wait for her to start another. Another step. She could smell the animal. She could smell Brandon's blood on the beast as it huffed and growled its bloodlusted ecstasy. A glint in the moonlight caught her eye, and she couldn't believe her luck. Just behind the beast, by Brandon's feet, was the knife. She crouched carefully and grabbed it in her hand. With a surge of courage, she jumped on the creature's back, swinging the knife around and plunging it into its neck. A scream ruptured from the beast. She felt it reverberate through the werewolf's body. It tried to stand, and she held on with everything she had. As the beast thrashed around, she heard ripping as the knife cut deeper into it. It swung its arms around, trying to grab her, but failed. It did manage to cut her legs and hips up with its wild swings, though. It stood at its full height and started to back up while trying to swing its head around to bite her. She put her free hand around the thing's neck, under the jaw, but not before it nipped her. She screamed in pain and could see the blood pour from her forearm. With a better grip, she pulled the knife towards her, ripping into the werewolf's flesh, carving her way around it. She could see a gap in its flesh. She pulled harder. The beast backed its way into a tree, trying to crush her beneath its weight and the hard surface. She nearly lost her grip on the knife as it grew so slippery from all the blood. It howled in pain and fell down to all fours. Daria sat on its back, pulling on its dog-like ears to expose the throat better. She pictured what it looked like from down the road and smiled, thinking about someone finding her riding on the back of a werewolf. It's funny how the mind wanders at the weirdest times, she thought. She reached around as far as she could and replanted the knife into the werewolf's throat. Its frantic movements had begun to slow, and she finally had some hope she might come out of this alive. The werewolf fell over on its side, and she lost her grip. The knife was under the body. Disgusted with even the thought of doing so, she wrapped her undamaged arm under the jaw of the beast and yanked upwards as hard as she could. Tissue ripped and gave way, and the beast wasn't fighting anymore. She adjusted and got a grip with both hands and yanked. She heard a loud pop, and the head came loose. She fell over backwards, still clutching the severed head in her hands. She dropped it and got back to her feet. She stumbled around the body back to Brandon. But it was too late. He was dead. She wiped blood from her arm on his flannel shirt and removed his belt for a tourniquet. She looked at the monster that had ruined her life in the light from the full moon and spit on it. A few moments later, she'd started the fire up again and walked back to the road to grab the body of the monster to burn. When she arrived, there was no creature. A naked, middle-aged man's severed head stared back at her as she dragged its body to the fire. She wasn't taking any chances. The smell of the burning body was too much to bear, and she headed back to the road to see if she could get her car unstuck. She tried to rock it back and forth, but it wasn't going to budge. She gave up and looked down the logging road. It was about 2 miles to the highway. She could walk that and hope to hitch for a ride back to the city. She put one foot in front of the other and started out down the road. The winding path was illuminated from the full moon through the break in the trees above. After about 3 minutes, she saw a fire and hope swelled up inside her. There was another camp. She could hitch a ride with them and get out of here. As she approached the site, she could smell a sweet smell. It was nearly intoxicating. What was that? She thought. Was it s'mores? It was more enticing than anything she'd smelled before. She approached the campsite slowly, peering through the trees at the campers within. Ow, Thomas! That really hurt! Look, I'm bleeding! Came a female voice from within. I'm sorry, babe, I was only joking. She heard a male voice call out. She licked her lips at the smell and was startled to find her canine teeth felt so much bigger. She felt something moving under her skin and watched in surprised horror as her nose grew into a snout. What was that noise? Daria heard the woman say. It was hard to make it out, now that all the other forest sounds were suddenly louder. She stepped into a clearing, trying to calm the campers, but the woman's scream surprised her. Werewolf! The woman screamed and pointed at her, but she didn't notice, because she was focused on the woman's bleeding wound. Real Monsters from NEPA by Michelle Adler. I don't know about the new kid. Don't you think he's a little weird? Tom McCullough whispered, leaning slightly over his desk to get closer to his friend. A little weird? Come on, he's a freak, Jacob nodded. They both snickered. In front of them sat Patrick Marshall Sherwood III, the aforementioned new kid. His incredibly formal-sounding name wasn't really befitting his posture. Hunched over, staring at his desk and wincing at their laughter. His dyed black shoulder-length hair, eyeliner, and all-black wardrobe should have succeeded in making him look dangerous. But in reality, it just made him look tired and pale. I have to admit, I felt bad for the kid. The rumor around school was that his dad had been killed by a pack of feral dogs while he and Patrick were camping somewhere in the mountains of Georgia. Patrick had somehow escaped meeting his end there, but he hadn't gotten away easily. His face and arms were covered in a multitude of deep, gnarly scars from the event, a permanent reminder that he, and only he, had survived something truly horrible, and not by much. To be fair, he'd have been an ugly kid even without the scars. He was just a little too lanky and awkward for me to believe he'd ever been cool. Life ain't really fair, I guess. I didn't know how much, if any, of the story was just dumb rumors. I wasn't even sure if Georgia had mountains, but if it was true, he'd picked just about the worst town to move to if he and his mom were trying to escape their tragic past. Our town, located in a quiet corner of northeastern Pennsylvania, was mostly rural, encompassing part of the valley and a lot of the surrounding woods. That might sound fine, though maybe boring on paper, but incidents involving feral dogs had always been common here. Usually it was just pets and small animals that went missing, but lately some cows had been found halfway eaten dotting the nearby farms. Some more people were on edge than usual. Not really a vacation from their grief is what I mean. So, back to the story. Those chuckleheads kept up with their insults for a while, calling him every name they could think of, poking him, sticking gum on his back, you name it. You'd probably have thought that our English teacher, Mrs. Alder, just kept blathering on about Shakespeare during all this. I wish she'd take notice, but she was so hard of hearing that I wasn't sure she could even hear what she was saying half the time. She was so old and fragile looking that I often wondered if she'd escaped a nursing home every morning just to come and teach us. It wasn't fair, though. I sat directly behind Tom in the last row of desks against the window, like a true delinquent I was, bouncing my leg, waiting for, a sign that I should jump in. I'm not proud of the fact that it took Patrick brushing teardrops off his desk for me to do something. I reached forward and punched the back of Tom's chair hard enough to get everyone, including our teacher's, attention. "Stop making fun of him, or the next thing I punch will be your face," I shouted. I saw Tom and Jacob flinch from behind. "Marisa," Mrs. Alder spat, sternly, miraculously cured of her partial deafness for a moment. "How many outbursts do we really need to have this week?" "But they were—" I tried. "No one will be picking on poor Patrick in my classroom. It's not his fault he's covered with horrible scars," she continued. I watched Patrick cringe, and the whole class began to giggle. There I go again, making matters worse. I left school late that day, long after the buses and carpools had gone. Basically my normal routine. Gotta make sure I don't run into any trouble. You see, like our scarred-up sad boy, I, too, was the subject of the other kids' hatred. But unlike him, I actually knew how to stand up for myself, and I could hold my own in a fight. Still, I didn't like to start trouble. I just relished in it when it came calling. But even if I won, bites and scratches do hurt after all, so it was better to avoid the rest of the student body when we were unsupervised, especially in the middle of the afternoon, in broad daylight. Who needs that kind of attention? However, on this particular day, waiting until my usual time, 4 p.m. to leave, wasn't enough. I pushed open the side entrance, and there was Patrick. He sat on the curb, his posture the same as earlier, the cool autumn breeze blowing his hair over his face. I held my breath, trying to be comically quiet and sneak away before he noticed. I just wanted to get home and not do my homework. Until again, I realized he was crying. I sighed and plopped myself down next to him. "Waiting for your folks to pick you up? Oh, right. I forgot. Dead dad. Your mom running late?" I corrected myself. "I don't think she's coming," he said softly, continuing to focus on the puddle of tears collecting on the asphalt. I realized this was the first time I'd heard him speak. "She's been different since... I can tell she doesn't like to look at me. Sometimes I think she forgets me on purpose. I would just try to walk back, but I don't know how to get home from here. I can't even look it up because a couple of kids from class pushed me and my phone broke my fall." "You just gonna sit here all night then?" "I was hoping to. I like the dark." I honestly couldn't tell if that line was supposed to be sarcastic. "Come on, tell me where you live. I'll walk you home," I offered as I stood up and brushed myself off. "You're not going to trick me and leave me halfway and steal my wallet, right?" he asked expectantly. "Well, geez, not anymore, I'm not." Patrick let out a little chuckle. "Okay, maybe we can make this work." "I'm Marisa," I said, helping him up. "And I promise I won't hurt you. Us freaks gotta stick together." As it turned out, Patrick only lived 1 block over from me in the cute little Cape Cod that old Mr. Patel owned before he got sick and had to move in with his kids. It was great because I didn't really have to go out of my way, but also a little sad because I only lived 6 blocks from the school. He was crying over a 10-minute walk. I agreed to help him find his way back to school the next morning and walk home with him again the following afternoon. Like I said, freaks need to stick together. "So, is it true about what happened to your dad?" I asked on our walk home the following afternoon. Patrick stopped dead in the center of the sidewalk. "Isn't it obvious it is?" He touched one of the scars on his arm tenderly. "My dad is dead. My mom probably blames me, and I look like some villain from a slasher film. My life is totally ruined." "Oh, that's a little dark, dude. I'm sorry." "No, it's better if I just lean into it. I'm a monster now, and I have to get used to it," he sighed. "Us monsters gotta stick together," I said like it was my tagline or something. "Marisa," he said bluntly, "you are not a monster." I furrowed my brow. He was silent the rest of the walk home. I felt bad for bringing up his dad and wouldn't have blamed him if I didn't even get a goodbye. But when he was halfway up his driveway, he stopped. "Marisa, I need to tell you something," he began without turning around. "Can you keep a secret? What did I say 5 minutes ago about us sticking together?" Patrick paused for a long time, like he was having trouble finding the right words. "Listen, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but that's okay. Even I think I'm crazy sometimes." He clenched his fists tightly at his sides. "But when we were camping, when those dogs showed up, they attacked me first. My dad fought so hard to stop them and lure them away from me. That's why he's dead. And I'm just this thing now. It's not your fault. No, that's not what I mean. When I was lying there, when they were tearing my dad to shreds, I could have sworn I heard them talking to each other. I could have sworn they were laughing. What does that even mean? I guess it's possible that I was delirious from blood loss, but if that's true, then how come even now, when it's really quiet, I can almost still hear them laughing?" His voice was shaking. At this point, he was staring directly at me again, his eyes full of fear. "Are you saying—" "I don't think they were dogs. I think they were something else." "Wolves, maybe?" I offered. Patrick let out a little pitiful laugh. "No, not wolves. So, now you know the truth. I'm crazy. Nice knowing you." "I don't think you're crazy, Patrick," I said, not sure if I was lying or not. Either way, I don't think that's a good enough reason for us to stop hanging out. He smiled in a mix of confusion and relief. "Thanks, Marisa." It seemed that letting someone else share his secret took a lot of weight off the poor guy's shoulders because, after that, he was a lot more outgoing around me. The edges of his sadness had been sanded down a little, and he actually let me get to know him. And as it turned out, Patrick was a pretty good kid. We were into the same comics and video games and even got each other's humor. We walked to and from school together every day for the next couple of weeks, and my mom let him stay for dinner most nights and sleep over on the weekends. As much as I considered myself something of a lone wolf, I had to admit it felt good to have someone around that really got me. I guess this is what it's like to have friends, huh? Things stayed good for a while. When the other kids realized that I had taken him under my wing, a lot of the bullying stopped. And when he was picked on, he had gotten pretty good at standing up for himself. This, however, leads us to the incident that threatened to shatter the small bit of peace we'd begun to carve out for ourselves. Tom and Jacob, the only two kids still brazen enough to constantly mess with Patrick, had come up with a new way to get under his skin. You see, whenever Patrick tried to speak in class, or passed them in the hallway, or even entered a room, they'd howl like wolves. Because it was a relatively easy and safe way to upset him, they were usually able to get whoever else was around to howl along with them. I know it doesn't sound that bad, but after 3 days of it, Patrick wasn't looking too good. It happened in Mrs. Alder's class, as most bad things did. Man, she was a terrible teacher and was discussing another terrible book that they tell you is a classic and has all this symbolism, but was just written by some dumb guy who probably didn't even know what symbolism was. So, who can tell me why they think the author decided to make the badge red? She asked. Everyone stayed perfectly still, dead-eyed, hoping to avoid being called on and having to discuss colors. Well, everyone except Patrick. He actually raised his hand. "Ah, yes, Mr. Marshall Sherwood, please enlighten us." "You see, there's not actual—" was all I could hear before a cacophony of howling delinquents overtook his quiet voice. "Now, students, settle down and let him finish. You can howl all you want on the bus home," she said sternly in her traditionally tone-deaf sort of way. Silence returned to the room. Patrick tried again. "There's not actually a—" The howling returned, then quickly abated. "Go on." "Not actually a howling, then silence again. A reason that howling, then silence." This pattern continued for a tragically long time. I thought maybe he'd be struggling to say that one sentence for the rest of the class, until during that last interruption, I saw something change in his eyes. Patrick had finally snapped. He waited patiently for the noise to calm and took a deep breath. Let me start over. There's not actually a reason. This time he didn't stop when they began again. He just slowly turned to Tom, who was directly behind him, grabbed him by the collar, and punched him in the face repeatedly, all the while continuing to relay his point about the book. When he was done, Tom's face was a mess, and there was no more howling, ever again. The rest isn't really important. Patrick went to the principal's office and got detention for the rest of the week, and Tom went to the nurse and got everyone's sympathy. Even though he'd gotten in trouble, Patrick's attitude drastically improved. Detention was a small price to pay for being able to speak again. This did mean that we couldn't walk home together for a while, though. On Fridays, he would usually pack an overnight bag and come straight home with me for the weekend. But with detention and his mom grounding him for beating Tom to a bloody pulp, Patrick told me we'd have to skip our normal weekend hangouts. I was actually relieved to hear it. It was a weird time of the month for me, and our hangout would have been super awkward. I felt I dodged a major bullet and was also thrilled that his mom was paying enough attention to know he'd gotten in trouble, and that she actually seemed to care. I expected an easy Friday night, so I was surprised that as I finished washing dishes from dinner and turned off the water, I was alerted to a frantic knocking at our front door. Maybe Patrick's mom had changed her mind, I figured. Disregarding the overwhelming panic that seemed to loom in the constant banging, I was totally shocked when the opening door revealed none other than the devil himself, Tom McCullough, still bruised from his run-in earlier in the week, panting hard. "Why are you here?" I asked. I really couldn't think of a single reason he'd want anything to do with me. He tried to catch his breath. Where's Patrick?" he pleaded. "What? You want a rematch?" No, listen, I think I messed up." He was still trying to catch his breath. Had he ran all the way here? "You want to apologize? Well, he isn't here. He's at home, grounded." I was ready to close the door and get back to my evening. "No, he isn't. I went there first. His mom said he never came home after detention. I was hoping I was wrong and that he's here, but... Oh no, I really messed up." His voice trembled. "What are you trying to say, Tom?" Maybe I already knew. "My dad was pretty upset that I got beat up, and I was really angry, so I said some things about Patrick that maybe I shouldn't have. You know we own the farm on Schuylkill Road, right? And you know some of our animals have been killed lately, right? Well, he thinks..." Tom struggled with how to say the next part. I could feel adrenaline creeping into my limbs. "I heard him talking to his friends this afternoon, and I saw him load silver bullets into his shotgun. Marisa, he knows." Everything felt fuzzy. "Where would they take him?" I had to think clearly. "There's woods on our property, 15 acres of it. We can basically do anything we want out there." "Okay." I pushed him out of the way and proceeded down my steps. The sky was already turning pink and purple with the coming of evening. There was no more time. There was going to be a full moon. Tonight. "Wait, I'll come with." "No, it's dangerous and you've messed up enough," I thundered, not bothering to look back. "This is why we don't tell adults things. They always get all murdery." "Marisa, you have to understand, I didn't mean for this to happen. Sure, I've been messing with Patrick, but I would never want him to get..." He paused. "Hurt. I tried to stop my dad, tried to pretend I was lying about the whole thing, but he's so set on, well, you know, that he wouldn't listen to me." I turned toward the direction of the farm and took off running. "Marisa!" Tom called out, but he was far behind me now. There was no way I could be there before the sun went down, but maybe I could still get there in time to stop them. By the time I reached Tom's family farm, the last threads of daylight were fading from the sky. I was exhausted but confident that I was about to get my second wind. The woods were dark and cool, and I could feel myself returning to my senses. I picked up speed, heading in the direction I was now confident I would find them. Please, let me make it in time. Eventually, distant chatter alerted me to Patrick's location. I approached quietly, hiding myself in the underbrush while I gauged the situation. Crickets and frogs had begun to sing in the blackness of the evening. 7 adults, with flashlights, were gathered in a circle. I couldn't see him, But I knew Patrick was in the center. Each man was carrying a firearm on his shoulder or holding one in his hand. I was not relieved to confirm that Tom had been telling the truth. Please, I don't understand what you're talking about. What would I want with cows? I'm a vegetarian! A voice that had to be Patrick's pleaded. In the back of my mind, I got a weird feeling that something wasn't right, but brushed it off. Listen, we know it was you. I mean, a kid who's been attacked by feral dogs shows up and we just coincidentally start losing livestock? I don't need to be a statistician to see the connection, a man that was probably Tom's dad was saying. Confess now, and maybe we'll be kind enough to let you live out the rest of your life in a cage. I swear, I didn't do anything bad. I don't know what you've heard, but please, I'm telling you the truth, Patrick begged. We'll see about that in a minute. Any minute now, Mr. McCullough said, looking up at the sky. One of the other men cocked his rifle. I'm tired of waiting. Let's get this over with. I'm missing my shows. A few of them began to argue about the merits of killing my friend now as opposed to later, and that was really enough for me. I moved forward slightly, twigs snapping under my weight, and let out a loud, guttural cry that just about shook the earth. The entire forest went completely silent, and stayed that way. I saw fear overtake the murderous group as they tried to find the source of the noise. I emerged confidently from my hiding place. Let him go! I howled. The blood collectively drained from their faces as they got a good look at me. I positioned myself to look as large as possible, my dense, wiry hair standing on end, teeth exposed in a snarl, saliva dripping from my jagged mouth. They pointed their guns in my direction, but I charged forward and latched onto the closest one, pulling it away from its owner and smacking him in the head with it. He hit the ground with the resounding thud. I bit into the rifle and broke it into pieces with my massive jaws as easily as if it had been a cracker. You really think your tiny bullets can stop me? I wailed. They inched back, still surrounding Patrick, but I was winning. Just one more push. Guys, shoot him already! Oh, thanks, Mr. McCullough. I've had enough! I lunged at them, ready to do whatever I had to, but that was enough to send them running for their lives, scurrying away like the cockroaches they were. Cowards! I huffed. Patrick was still on the ground. His hands were tied and he looked a little beaten up. He stared up at me, his whole body shaking in fear. I poked my nose in closer and sniffed at his face, trying to wrap my mind around the situation. Then went for his hands. He flinched at my hot breath, not seeming to realize that I was chewing through the ropes and not his fingers. It's okay. You're okay, I assured him, but he was just hopelessly confused. Suddenly, his posture shifted. Marisa? Why are you a werewolf? Patrick, why are you not a werewolf? I don't know how to answer that. You aren't going to eat me, are you? Well, not anymore, I'm not, I groaned. Us monsters gotta stick together after all.
The Wolf of Fagan County by David O'Hanlon. Maybe Whistler was a nice town once. It seemed that way until the summer of '86. The old folks always whispered about certain places, about the places you don't go and the boogeymen that dwelled within. Everyone in Fagan County knew a local ghost story. Back then, I loved to hear those stories. Nowadays, not so much. My dad trucked crops from the farms into the neighboring states of Louisiana and Mississippi. I didn't see much of him. He left before dawn and got home after sunset. The day before my 13th birthday, he took a load to Shreveport. I awoke to a stack of used horror comics the next morning with a note that read, "You're old enough for the good ones now, soldier." I loved the way those pages smelled. After all these years, I still have a couple of them in the suitcases I live out of. I'd read through the entire bundle in a week. I flipped through them and found the one I'd enjoy the most for a second visit when my mother called from downstairs. "Connie, come quick!" she shouted. I hated when she called me that. It was bad enough being named Conrad. The effeminate nickname caught on with my friends in second grade, and then with the rest of the student body by the end of recess. Something sounded off in her voice as I trudged down the narrow staircase that descended into the kitchen. Mom was sitting at the table with her elbows pressing into the vinyl top, and her hands hiding her face. My sister, Lisa, had her head down, shrouded in her arms. Her body convulsed as she bawled noisily inside. I held my breath all the way to the table. No one spoke to me as I slid the chair away from the edge and eased my way into it. Mom reached over and put her hand on mine. "Something terrible's happened," she whispered. Something terrible had happened a few weeks ago, too, and a few weeks before that. We'd discussed both of those events as a family. No one was crying then. Sure, Mom had been shaken up by the discovery of the first body, but it seemed like nothing to worry about. We all knew Old Man Megara from around town. He would pop out like a magician's rabbit to grump about what a bunch of slack-jawed hippie spawn all the kids were whenever you least expected it. The police said it was a heart attack that took him, and that coyotes took to eating his remains. Grotesque and unseemly as it were, my folks delivered the news to my sister and me with just the facts and reminded us to stay away from the woods. Coyotes rarely attacked people, but Dad said there's something different about any animal, including man, once they got a taste for blood. The second time we were called to the table, it was clearly more bothersome. Mom wasn't handling it well, but she remained calm as she told us about the bodies found along Country Road 63. A couple of teens gone to make out got cut up real bad. Chief Hardesty said it was just a freak occurrence, a crime of opportunity, and that the killer was likely long gone. Our parents told us to be home 30 minutes before sundown after that, and to never go anywhere alone, just in case. This time was different. "Connie," she started, tugging at the silver locket dangling from her thin neck. Her voice trembled. "It's Brenda." My stomach nodded. Brenda Knowles had been Lisa's best friend since kindergarten. She'd babysat for me on a few occasions and came to eat dinner with us every Wednesday. She was my first crush, too. I sniffled, but held back any other reaction until Mom could finish. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe those old Tales from the Crypt comics were poisoning my imagination the way Father Dean said they would at youth service. Maybe she was just moving away. That would explain why they were so upset. "Chief Hardesty found her this morning," Mom continued. "Nope, it was exactly what I thought it was." I don't remember the exact moment that I realized the killings were exactly 1 month apart. But I do remember Lisa raising her face to stare at Mom and then me in turn. Her lips quivered, and then she stood up fast enough to knock the chair to the floor. She slammed her fists onto the table and screamed. That I'll never forget. That look. And those words. She was eaten. Lisa cried until she passed out that night. I watched the news with Mom to see if the police had anything to say. The station's newest reporter, Rex Willits, looked like he'd been sick as he raised the microphone close to his chin. His hand shook slightly and his trademark smile was nothing but a thin line of white teeth below his bushy mustache. Rex nodded slowly and started his report when the phone rang in the kitchen, and Mom went to answer. "I'm here at the Ridley Funeral Home in Fagan County to report on a grisly, unimaginable crime," Rex started. He swallowed hard. "The body of 15-year-old Brenda Knowles was found just before dawn this morning. Brenda had been babysitting for family friends the prior evening. She started the short walk to her home just before 11 p.m. I turned my attention to Mom's shouting in the kitchen. "What do you mean 2 days, Paul?" she growled. "It doesn't take 2 damn days to get a mechanic." Dad's truck broke down. That happened a lot when he was hauling rice to Shreveport. Only then, though.
Mom noticed too. She had a pretty good idea of what was going on.
"What about the kids?" she wailed. "You know what's going on here. You're leaving us alone so you—"
Her voice became muffled and I scooted closer to the television to hear what Rex had to say. I heard the phone slam against the receiver several times and Mom stomping up the steps. "I've seen the body. My God in heaven, I'll never unsee it now," Rex said when movement caught his attention. He snapped his fingers and pointed his cameraman in the direction of the police chief. Other reporters rushed in around him. Rex elbowed one of them out of his way and reached in with his mic. "Don't you buzzards have anything better to do?" Chief Hardesty barked. "A child's dead, for Christ's sake." "How?" Rex asked. "How did she die?" "Violently," Hardesty answered in his low, gruff drawl. "Is this related to last month's double homicide?" a woman asked. "We don't have conclusive evidence linking the two this early in the investigation," Hardesty said. His shoulders sagged. "There are similarities." "Were the other victims missing flesh and muscle?" Rex quizzed him. "Were there bite marks on them as well?" Hardesty glared at Rex, and then spoke with forced restraint. "At this time, I'm asking all residents of Whistler and the outlying areas to stay indoors at night. The curfew is merely a request, however." The wail of sirens cut the report short. We wouldn't find out until the morning that they'd found another body. Crazy Dolores lived in a shack on the edge of town. She sold herbal remedies and told fortunes for $1. No one knew how long she'd been dead. I climbed into bed, but didn't dare go to sleep. I opened a comic and thought about Dad. Maybe the rig really broke down, but I didn't buy it. He was spending time with some woman, in a strange way that made me feel better. He was more worried about getting laid than he was about the killer on the loose, so maybe it wasn't a big deal. My door creaked open, and Lisa slipped through the gap. I laid the comic down. I didn't know what to say. Sorry your friend was brutally murdered and partially eaten really didn't seem like it helped the situation. Then again, we're going to find Brenda's killers wasn't a winner either, but that's exactly what Lisa said as she leaned on my dresser. I gawked at her and waited for what felt like an eternity for her to say something else. "Look, Connie," she started, then paused and chewed her bottom lip. "Chief Hardesty is a scumbag. He's going to pin all this on the first person that ain't Baptist enough for him. Then the murderer is just going to drift away." I was still too young to know how common that sort of thing was around there, or what kind of man Baxter Hardesty really was. I did want to make sure that Brenda's killer got caught, however. "The killings are about a month apart," I said, hesitantly, unsure of exactly what I'd discovered. I shrugged. "What if the killer travels and just stops through here every few weeks? Or lives here and returns home once a month?" Lisa offered. "Dad's friend Ted is a long-haul driver." I remembered. Ted tried to convince Dad to work with him all the time. I also remembered Ted coming to my birthday party. I shook my head. "I'm pretty sure he's out of town right now." I scratched the 2 recently sprouted hairs on my chin. "What about a delivery driver? Brown's only gets a few deliveries a month." Lisa thought it over and nodded. "Okay, we'll go by and see when they got a delivery." Thinking the conversation was done, I lifted my comic. "What is that, Connie?" Lisa asked shakily. "What are you reading?" I closed the issue and looked down at the cover. Bright yellow eyes stared up at me above the fangs dripping blood over a broken skull. I looked up at my sister. I knew what she was thinking, and I wanted to tell her that she was stupid. I wanted to. But I didn't. The same thought hit me when I looked at those fierce yellow orbs on the black cover. My stomach pitched as I thought about the recent events. My eyes left the stare of the beast and met my sister's. "It's a werewolf," I finally said. We tried to put the notion back into our imaginations where werewolves were supposed to stay. Lisa and I rode our bikes to Brown's General Store just past noon. The curfew officially started at sundown and was no longer a request. Not that it mattered, the streets were already deserted. The baseball cards sputtering in the bike spokes signaled the arrival of Brad Breaker. Brad was between Lisa and myself in age, so he hung out with both of us. He was the definition of cool with his acid-wash jeans and his torn midriff Bruce Springsteen t-shirt. Brad could play guitar. And football. He was also muscular, with aquiline features and sandy blonde hair that made him look like Patrick Swayze in Red Dawn, and made Lisa's brain stop working. My mom spazzed when I said I was leaving. Brad looked at the grocery store and turned back to us. But you said it was an emergency. You won't get in trouble, will you? Nah, Brad shrugged. My old man said experience builds character, and that I needed to bring back more Folgers. Lucky this is our first stop, I said. So why are we here? Lisa looked to me. Telling him our theory would have been the right thing to do, but she thought he was cute and hoped I, being closer to the childish age to believe such things, would do it for her. I did not. We want to find Brenda's killer, I said and waved at the street. Everyone's scared to death, but we want to help. Why? Brad asked. I mean, why do you think you can do it faster than the police? I removed the wrinkled, somewhat neatly folded newspaper clippings and handed them to him. Mr. McGarrah died and his corpse was eaten by coyotes. That's what they say anyhow. There's been a killing at the same time every month since. Each of those victims was partially eaten as well, I said, rattling off the facts as quickly as I could. I think the killer comes to town once a month. We think the murderer might be a delivery person or a truck driver, so we want to ask the Browns if they've gotten any shipments this week, Lisa added. Gnarly, Brad nodded slowly. Let's get to work. The Browns deliveries turned up bupkis. We checked with every business in town for the same results. That theory was as dead as Brenda, which left us with only one other possibility. 7:15 we stopped by the ice cream shop and got sundaes for a quick sugar rush before dinner. I debated sharing the werewolf idea. I'd been trying to dismantle it as we asked around. If it was a werewolf, why'd the killings start only recently? Was anyone acting differently around town? Was anyone new? What made someone a werewolf? So many questions, but none of them ruled out the possibility. What if... It's stupid, Brad said, staring up at the now full moon. What if it's a werewolf? Lisa choked and stared at me, wide-eyed over puffed cheeks full of banana split. I mean, my pops tells me to stay away from Snyder Creek because some kids died back in the 1920s. Everyone says that was a monster. Why couldn't this be one? Darn it! I snapped my fingers and scooted my chair back with a screech of steel feet against the sidewalk. Why didn't I think of that? Think of what? Lisa asked. I've heard that story too, I answered. The Snyder Creek ghoul. They never found out what really happened. Lisa, we need to go to the library and see if we can find any old papers about it. Not a chance, Connie. She pointed at the Sherbert skyline. We need to get home before dark. It's a long ride. The library's probably already closed anyway, Brad offered. The cops are never going to believe us, Lisa said. After tonight, he'll just be a man, I reassured her. We'll have a month to find out who the werewolf is and prove it. Crap! Brad let his head hang. Most non-triumphant. What? Lisa and I asked in unison. I forgot the coffee. He put a foot on a pedal. I'm going to hustle to Brown's. See you later. He wouldn't. Brad's body wasn't found for 6 days. Worst of all, strange as it sounds to say it like a bad thing, he didn't get eaten. It would be a while before Lisa drew a startling conclusion from the fact. The curfew started an hour earlier after that. A citizens' patrol was organized as well. It wasn't much more than a dozen yokels with spotlights and guns driving the paved roads, however. They wouldn't go down the miles of gravel paths where there weren't any streetlights to keep them safe. They didn't find the werewolf either. All they accomplished was shooting a drifter who was busking at the Crispy Chicken truck stop. Chief Hardesty tried to pin the murders on that poor soul like Lisa had suspected he would. No one was buying it. By that point, Dad had decided that between the new woman and a monster running roughshod back home, he had all the reason he needed to move to Louisiana. He came while we were asleep to collect his things. We spent every day tracking down information and investigating whatever absurd idea came to us. It was 2 nights before the next full moon when Lisa told me her troublesome theory. He didn't eat Brad because he was warning us, she said somberly across the table. The local library had few books on lycanthropy. We'd been reading them every night and comparing them to the 2 clippings we had from 1926, when the Snyder Creek ghoul had struck. I put the piece of paper I was using as a bookmark between the pages of the tome and closed it. "What do you mean?" I whispered. "We were asking around about delivery schedules, about people from out of town." She shook her head. "The wolf isn't a stranger. We know him, and he heard us talking. He wants us to leave him alone." I checked my watch and reached under the table, wrestling with the zipper from my fanny pack. "Then he shouldn't have killed our friends," I growled. I pulled my prize and set it where Lisa could see with a heavy thump. Her eyes widened at the sight of cold blue steel. "Dad forgot it when he packed," I told her, and lifted the St. Christopher medallion our aunt had given me for my birthday. "I've got this and $6 silver. We can make 2 or 3 bullets with that." "We don't know how to make bullets." "Otto Dickens does," I pointed out. "We have time to get to his store and back home if we go right now." "We're not hunting this damn thing, Connie." Lisa stood quickly and looked around at the mostly empty library. She lowered her voice. "We should stop this. If he killed Brad to scare us off, then he knows who we are. We need the bullets regardless." Her face twisted with contempt. She knew I was right and scooped her backpack before heading to the exit. We rode our bikes to the fork in the road, left to our house or right to Otto Dickens' gun shop. Lisa didn't speak as she leaned and pulled her Schwinn down the right-hand street. I smiled softly and followed. Most families in Whistler had lived no further away than the county line for generations. Otto just seemed to appear one day. Despite what you might have heard about Southern hospitality, it doesn't apply to strangers. Otto had an uncanny ability with firearms, however. Small towns of rural Arkansas might have hated strangers, but they certainly loved their guns. Otto was soon a welcomed member of the community and set up a shop on the far side of town, a couple of miles past the old cemetery. The tarnished bell over the door announced our arrival with whatever the hell a bell's version of a smoker's cough is. Otto looked up from the reloading station, his face twisted with curiosity as 2 teens entered his tiny store. A long scar parted his wild white beard on the left side of his face. He held up the cartridge he was working on between his thumb and index finger. "Best goddamn rifle round in history," he said in a voice that sent a shiver racing up my spine. 45-70. I kept a chopped-down Winchester in this caliber for clearing tunnels. Can't hear much of shit anymore as a result, but it could turn old Victor Charlie inside out in those confined spaces. You ever shot a man? Lisa and I exchanged bewildered glances. How many kids could say yes? Didn't think so. Otto deposited the finished cartridge into a cardboard box beside him. Well, what can I help you with then? Too early for hunting. Not where we're hunting, I said. Lisa elbowed me in the ribs and cleared her throat. You can make bullets, right? Reckon I can. Lisa held out her hand and I gave her the items from my fanny pack. Otto left his stool and prowled to her. He bounced the coins and pendant in his palm. His amber eyes darted from one of us to the other before he snorted. You want silver bullets. He set the materials on his counter and shook his head. That's a shit idea. Silver's too dense. It won't take the rifling. Unless you plan on shooting at a barn, you won't be hitting nothing from more than a few feet. Muzzle velocity with nosedive too, because the round is heavier than your powder load. You won't mushroom either. They'll go clean in and clean out. Shot shells. That's what you need if you're looking to use silver. Lisa looked at me, completely lost in the gunsmith's lesson in ballistic science. I didn't understand it either. We don't have a shotgun, I finally said. We have a Chief Special 38. A snub nose shooting silver bullets. Otto burst with boisterous laughter. Hell, you kids might as well slather yourselves in barbecue sauce and yell, "Here, puppy," if you plan on fighting a werewolf with that setup. My jaw fell open, and I quickly glanced to my sister to find her in the same state. Otto put a hand on each of our shoulders. I hadn't noticed before, but 3 of his fingers were missing from the one resting on me. He hunkered slightly to look us in the eyes. Don't look surprised. Ain't much else you could be doing with silver bullets. He went behind the counter and pulled a sawed-off shotgun from beneath the register. My eyes drifted to the black tape wrapped around the walnut stock and the rough scratches where a serial number had once been. Reckon you can borrow this one. Going to take about an hour on the shells. You believe us? I asked. Lots of things in this world we pretend not to believe in no more. Pretend weren't real in the first place. He absently rubbed the scar on his cheek with the nubs of his fingers. We pretend until they start eating us. The sun was just an orange razor's slash by the time we got home. We dropped our bikes in the yard and ran inside. The shotgun mostly fit inside Lisa's backpack so we could sneak it past Mom. Not that it mattered. All the lights were off and she wasn't waiting for us like normal. I headed for the living room while she stashed the gun and changed clothes. "How are you, soldier?" A gruff, ragged voice asked from a darkened corner. The hairs prickled on the back of my neck at my dad's pet name for me. He stepped out of the shadows. He looked different and naked as he gracefully scaled the back of the couch and perched on the cushion. The weak glow of the mail-order torch lamps shimmered on the sweat-slick hairs growing longer from his tight flesh. His elongated nails scratched at the thick orange fabric of the sofa. "You can catch a lot from whores," he said. He spoke slowly, like each word was new to him. Long strands of drool slung from his mouth as he flexed his jaw with a series of loud, painful pops. "Your ma knew. Tried to fix it with crazy Dolores." His obsidian eyes focused on the coffee table. I saw Mom's locket sitting there next to the half-full ashtray, still wet with blood. "It's not just the bite," he grumbled, his words becoming deeper and more human. "It's like the clap. I brought it home. Made her. Mr. McGarrel was... accident." He shifted on the cushion. Things moved inside his body, bones and muscles realigning, and he whined like a dog in a sticker bush. He sprang over the table and landed inches from me. His nose twitched as he took in my scent. His lips didn't touch anymore as the fangs locked together. Stiff fur covered his once chubby cheeks. "She couldn't control," he growled. His teeth snapped in front of me.
"I can. Join. Pack. Become. Come with me, soldier."
I quivered with fear, with hurt, with anger. I never suspected my parents. I needed answers. Lisa screamed and broke me out of his hypnotic gaze. His hand clamped over my mouth. He watched the stairs, waiting for Lisa to come down. I eased my hand to the fanny pack, wiggling my fingers to stretch the zipper without the noise. "Connie?" Lisa called. Dad sniffed the air. I watched his pointed ear twitch. He whipped his head back around to me and his eyes widened as the barrel pressed against his chest. The 38 was louder than I remembered. The bullets weren't silver, but they did the trick. He fell backwards and crashed through the table. I fired the rest of them into his face while he was down. He screamed in pain behind me while I darted for the stairs. I slammed into Lisa, who was clutching the shotgun. "I think there's 2 of them!" I wasn't listening. I jerked the weapon from her hands and went to finish Dad off. Only, he wasn't there. 2 bloody bullets rolled in the debris of the coffee table. A shadow fell over me from the kitchen. I threw myself to the floor, narrowly dodging the swipe of my father's claws. I rolled onto my back, and he looked more monstrous than before. His face had contorted into a snout. The front window shattered, startling me. My finger tensed on the trigger, and the silver buckshot tore through Dad's thigh, obliterating the wood paneling beyond. I clambered up the stairs, and Lisa pulled me to my feet by my collar. We ran into our parents' bedroom and slammed the door behind us. I screamed when I saw the body on the bed. It was Mom, but just barely. Her features were still deformed, her body still covered in the bristly fur of her new form, and her head hung from the gnawed throat by a few remaining strands of muscle. Everything Dad tried to tell me suddenly made sense. His new girlfriend turned him, and he turned Mom. That's how the werewolf knew we were snooping. Mom was doing the killing, while Dad joined his new pack in Louisiana. I vomited at the foot of the bed. "What's happening?" Lisa asked. Downstairs sounded like a dogfight. Snarls, yips of pain, furious barks, things breaking. I threw the door open and whipped around the corner with the shotgun raised and ready. Dad pounced onto the stairs. Blood gushed from wounds, and he bared his fangs as he crawled up the steps toward me. I pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. I remembered duck hunting with him, and then my own folly. I hadn't chambered another round. He drew closer as I racked the slide, but it was too late. His claws opened deep furrows in my thigh, and I toppled backwards. Then the other wolf came into view. It grabbed my father's legs and pulled him down the steps before mounting his back. The beast howled victoriously and glared at me with amber eyes set in white fur. The monster clamped its fully formed jaws down on the back of Dad's neck. I heard the wet snap of the spine as it shook its head from side to side. I stared at the long scar, parting its fur, at the claws digging into its prey, and the missing fingers beside them. I pressed the barrel of the shotgun to the back of my father's skull and fired. The white wolf slunk away. Brain matter and pieces of skull clung to its fur. I pumped the shotgun again. And then the beast was gone. By morning, the bodies had fully reverted to their human forms. Chief Hardesty didn't question anything. Dad was the killer, and Mom was just a victim. We let him run with that story. Before our aunt could come and pick us up, we needed to take care of one more thing. We rode our bikes to Otto Dickens' shop and found him assembling a pistol at his counter. "Reckon the police seized that gun," he said simply. "Yeah," I answered. "Sorry, I guess." I set my mother's locket on the counter and looked at the gunsmith questioningly. "Wolfsbane," he licked his lips. "It helps when you're young, when the moon is still your master." He finished the pistol he was working on and slipped it into a messenger bag. He pushed the kit over to me. "I haven't killed anyone in a long time, in case you were wondering," he told us. "What do we do now?" Lisa asked. "Different breeds of wolf the world over. My kind don't have a pack here." He pointed at the gauze around my leg. "Your old man's kind does. You took from them. They'll take from you. A wolf never forgets. You're just rabbits now, and there's nothing left to do for a scared bunny but to run." We took the bag Otto prepared for us and left his shop. We didn't go back to the house and wait for our aunt, though. We rode our bikes to the outskirts of Fagan County and hitched a ride at the Crispy Chicken. They caught up with us in St. Louis 3 years later. I buried Lisa behind a city park. I rest in one place until I hear the bays of the pack on those bright, moonlit nights, and then I disappear onto another stretch of asphalt always moving, always staying ahead of the wolves, always ready to remind them that rabbits have teeth too. Squirrels by Douglas Waltz. The first time I saw the squirrel, I was jogging down Marigold Street. It intersected with my street, Parker Street. My route was simple enough. Out my front door, go left, turn left down Marigold, which led all the way to Gambrell Park and the running trails. 5 miles out, 5 miles back. So the squirrel, unlike most squirrels you see in trees or running across the neatly manicured lawns that I ran by daily, was in one of the upper floor windows of Mrs. Woodrow's house. The biggest problem with that wasn't the fact that the squirrel was in the house. It was that the house was empty. It had been empty for the past month since Mrs. Woodrow had died. She was a nice old lady, lived alone in her 80s, husband long gone to the great beyond. I would see her once in a while on my morning runs. The consensual smile and wave each time, but that was really it. I had heard from my friend Rob that she had died. He was in the realtor business and in charge of selling the house. I saw his fake smiling face on the sign planted in the front yard near the sidewalk. I knew from that first sighting of the squirrel Rob would be mad. Wouldn't do to have the house become infested with critters. Probably found a spot up near the roof and got in that way. I told myself to mention it to Rob the next time I saw him, but each and every time it just slipped my mind. Apparently a squirrel in a house didn't make that big of an impression on me. Until the following week, when I jogged past, and there were 2 squirrels, just sitting up on their hind legs, looking out the window. The front side of the house had 3 windows on the top floor and a huge picture window that I assumed was in the living room, and a smaller one on the other side that probably was over the sink in the kitchen. So, the squirrel population had doubled in a pretty short period of time. The second squirrel prompted me to call Rob, and he didn't answer, so I left him a message, telling him he might want to look into an exterminator. And that was the last I thought of Rob and Mrs. Woodward's house. Until the third squirrel showed up. Now each window on the top floor had a squirrel, all being really passive and just staring out the windows. Soon the bottom floor windows had squirrels as well. I could feel those soulless black eyes staring at me as I jogged past each and every morning. I could swear they were watching me. But that's impossible. Squirrels don't do that. I was so sure they didn't do that I checked Google after my run. Yeah, squirrels could care less what we are up to as long as we weren't trying to kill them. I had no reason to kill the squirrels. Another week followed, and soon the picture window had a line of squirrels in it. And there were more than one of them in the other windows. Seems the place was filling up fast, I joked to myself. It made me chuckle. After 3 times of reaching Rob's machine, I decided I could just let Rob find out on his own that the late Mrs. Woodward's lovely house was becoming a squirrel condo. What business was it of mine? But it did seem like a lot of squirrels. I had no idea how many squirrels lived in a normal residential neighborhood, and that led me back to Google. Yeah, for everyone you saw, there could be more. A lot more. That unnerved me slightly. Mrs. Woodward's house was a block from my own. Last thing I needed was vermin trying to get into my house. Finally, one day I noticed the for sale sign with Rob's face was gone from the front yard. Windows were still full of squirrels. Did someone move in and keep the squirrels? I laughed at the absurd thought and stopped at the walkway that led to the front door of the house. What the hell? I actually said aloud. It broke the quiet silence of the morning air, and I looked around to see if anyone had heard me. Not a lot of traffic in the neighborhood that early in the morning, so I was good. I decided to walk up to the front door and knock. Before my hand touched the door, I noticed a weird, low chittering noise that seemed to emanate from the entire house. How many squirrels could be in there? I almost knocked, but then the door opened. I tensed, expecting a swarm of killer squirrels to leap from the door right at my face. Instead, there was an old man staring at me. He was small, slightly hunched, with a face so filled with wrinkles he could have been 100 years old if he was a day. "Yes?" he said in a weird, high-pitched voice. I was speechless. He continued to stare at me. I finally managed to ask him about the squirrels. "What squirrels?" came the same high-pitched voice. I leaned away from the door to look up to the windows. I was going to point out how they were filled with the little beasts, but the windows were empty. Not a single squirrel in sight. I panicked, apologized, and took off running. I had gone 3 blocks before I realized my brain had decided to finish my run. There was a trickle of ice-cold sweat running down my back, and my face felt red hot. The next morning I told myself, just skip a day. I reassured myself that I ran every day religiously and could miss one. I kept telling myself that as I put on my shorts and a t-shirt. I was pretty sure I had convinced myself as I was lacing up my running shoes, and a little shocked at my own behavior as my feet hit the sidewalk and I started to run. I had to know. I had to see for myself that some little old man had moved into Mrs. Woodward's house, and the squirrels must have left, unless he was raising the squirrels. Why would people raise squirrels? They couldn't make great pets. Meat, maybe? I knew people ate squirrels, and they are awful small, so maybe he was raising them in bulk to make it more profitable. As I turned onto Marigold, the icy sweat returned. Where would he sell squirrel meat? I never in my life could remember seeing squirrel for sale in any supermarket I had stepped foot in. Maybe online as a specialty? All of my assumptions were swirling in my brain as I ran past the house, windows filled with squirrels. And this time, I watched them all lock their black, beady eyes on me. Their heads turned as they followed my progress until I was past the house. At that point, I finished my run out of spite. Yeah, that'll teach those damn squirrels. I laughed again at my own sense of humor. Felt like maybe I laughed a little too long at such a lame thought. The next morning, I was watching the news and heard about a rash of robberies in and around my neighborhood. It seemed that even the suburbs weren't safe from the nearby city life of crime and violence. I had installed a burglar alarm years ago, so it wasn't a problem for me. I got ready for my run and headed out the door, ready for my daily squirrel encounter. As I approached the house, it felt like something was off. Then I noticed it. There wasn't a single squirrel in any of the windows, and the front door was wide open. I slowed down as I reached the walkway and agonized over what to do next. I stared at the open door. From the sidewalk, it was just a black rectangle. No noise. No squirrels. I must have stared at that doorway for what felt like an hour at least, but knew it was just my nerves exaggerating time. I decided to slowly walk towards the door. Halfway down the walk, I realized I should probably call the police. My hand went into my front pocket and came up empty. I could see it lying on my kitchen counter, mocking me for not remembering to take it. "Idiot," I whispered, as if I had someone there with me and I didn't want them to hear. I inhaled deeply and walked to the doorway. Looking into the gloom, it just looked like a normal house. Not a sign of a squirrel or the little old man who had answered the door. I called out and waited. No answer. I called out one more time with the same results. Finally, I took my first step ever into what had been Mrs. Woodward's house. It had an odd smell that I recognized immediately. It was old people smell. Years ago, I had a part-time job at a senior facility. I went around and checked on the people who lived there. It was a nice enough job. Most of them just wanted to talk, so I heard some pretty fascinating stories. But the smell was always there, in each room. My favorite person to visit with was Mr. McCleary, Harrison McCleary, 95 years old. He had been in both World Wars and had a story every time I visited. Finally, one day, I asked him what that particular smell was. "That's death," he said matter-of-factly. When he saw my puzzled face, he explained it to me. "People decay their whole lives. Sure, there's some growth there at first, but even then you lose old cells to be replaced by new ones. As you near the end of your journey here on this rock, you just don't move around as much, so the smell has nowhere to go. That's what you smell. Perfectly natural." I had left it at that. Made perfect sense to me. And now I was in a house that I expected to find squirrel central, and there wasn't a single one to be seen. I flipped the switch near the front door, and the lights blazed to life. Still no squirrels. Then I heard a faint, wet chewing noise coming from the kitchen. Against my better judgment, I went to the kitchen. To this day, I really wish I had just left and gone home to call the police. But I didn't. The kitchen looked like a tornado had ripped through it. Nothing was where it belonged. The little table and chair set that had been a breakfast nook was overturned, and on the floor were two figures. One was the old man, but something looked wrong. He looked flat, like he was just a suit of an old man. There was no substance there, just skin. Next to him was a pile of squirrels in the shape of a man. Under them was another man. Each of their little claws and mouths were bright red from the blood. My panicked vision saw a gun lying near the man being devoured, and as my thought processes fired through my brain, I put it all together. The rash of burglaries. The old man on the floor. The other man with the gun. Obviously, the crook didn't realize that someone was home, got in the house, and surprised the old man But why was the old man so flat? That was when I noticed that the chewing noise had dissipated. I stopped trying to look everywhere and focused on the body. All of the squirrels were staring blankly at me. A few had drops of blood fall from their mouths as they continued to stare. I knew I had to get out, but my legs were refusing the simplest command to run. I took one step backward. The pile of squirrels flew off the dead man in a flurry and headed for the body of the old man. And then I saw it. One by one, in rapid succession, they squeezed into his mouth, and the old man inflated and took form. As the last one burrowed into his mouth, he stood up and stared at me. The last squirrel's tail still hanging from his mouth. The tail disappeared with a disgusting slurp. The old man wiped his mouth with the sleeve of his shirt, staining it scarlet in the process. He took one step forward, and in that high-pitched voice he said, "Get out!" My brain clicked, my legs came to life, and I ran out of the kitchen. 2 more steps that were more like leaps put me at the front door, and I vaulted back to my house. My mind registered the door slam behind me, and I made my best time ever getting back to my house, where I collapsed into a sweaty ball of fear and disbelief. The next day, Clad in my running outfit, I reached the end of my walkway that connected to the sidewalk. And then, I made a right.
Bringing Out the Wolf in Me by Rob Fields. Seriously, what is it with guys here at Strickfield High School? High school's not a place of learning for these dumbasses. It's just a place to meet girls and try to satisfy their raging hormones. I wish I'd stayed in Malibu and taken my chances with those werewolf hunters there. But no! I had to come back to Strickfield. Not only do guys here refuse to leave me alone, and keep in mind that Danielle Boyd made the cover of several fashion magazines, including 2 nude spreads in Vanity Fair. They want to be the alpha male to say they've taken me to bed. I find myself saying alpha more since I was bitten by a werewolf at the height of a lunar eclipse. You'd think I'd turn into a she-bitch during the full moon, right? Right? No. Turns out I go into she-bitch mode whenever I get pissed off, which ain't hard for me since I got some serious anger issues. Anyway, once my fuse gets lit, I go through my pains, my bones elongating, my hair prickling and growing out, my fingers becoming claws, my mouth turning into a muzzle with razor-sharp teeth. Feeling all that pain pisses me off even more, and don't get me started on how I lose every bit of clothing I'm wearing. Once I'm the she-bitch, I stay that way until I finally calm down. Believe it or not, I've stayed in she-bitch mode for as long as 2 days before finally calming down and becoming me again. You'd think I could just calm myself down since I'm fully aware of myself while running around Strickfield in my silver fur. Like I said, I got serious anger issues. My roommate, Darla Blake, stopped trying to tell me to get therapy. During my first session, I wolfed out and wrecked the whole office. Okay, but you're wondering what my condition has to do with what's going on now, right? Like I said, guys don't want to leave me alone. I guess that's on me when you're an ex-supermodel and people won't let you forget it. Hell, I even wolfed out once after a brainless jock slapped my ass not too long ago. But let's talk about one particular asshole that goes to Strickfield High, shall we? Keenan Dorfman just transferred to my school after getting booted out of Strickfield Academy. Supposedly, he was scoring way too many girls there. I even got a heads up from Bella Tabon that this man-whore's got his eye on me, specifically. Funny thing about being the kind of cursed I am, I can see in the dark in my human form. I can also smell things the same way as if I was the wolf. And let me tell you, I ain't never smelled the kind of testosterone I've smelled being close to Keenan Dorfman. In fact, Aileen Donnerly heard his nickname as Alpha, on account of all the pussy he gets. Believe me, my fellow cheerleaders ain't fucking with me. I know my bitches well enough to know they're okay. I know I can be a handful to them since I'm a literal raging bitch, but they know to expect that from me. But when Felicia Mirren, our captain, told me privately there were rumors going around that Keenan scored with one of the teachers at Strickfield High, Mrs. Rowland, I rolled my eyes and told her I couldn't have cared less. But when Felicia said she'd heard Keenan say he was coming for me, that he was going to marry me, I damn near wolfed out. For the record, Felicia knows about me. In fact, all my bitches know about me. Anyway, I knew Felicia wasn't lying. Thankfully, she helped calm me down. Unfortunately, that calmness wouldn't last. I just finished my shower after cheerleading for a basketball game. I wanted to hang out with Darla since I wasn't working at Roth's Rings tonight. Also, she was off from dancing at Sexpectations. As soon as I exit the main doors of Strickfield High, Keenan Dorfman's standing there with his friends. And oh, did he ever see me. In fact, he approaches me. I raise my hand in front of me. Fuck off, Keenan. His sneer says it ain't happening. I'm sure you heard around school that I want you, Danielle. He points at me. People keep saying you're the hardest one to get here. Now he's rubbing his hands together. I really hope you are that hard to get. And he's got a gleam in his eye. Because not only will I get you, I think I'm in love. Yeah, you're the one I'm going to marry. When he sees me heaving, he comes right after me. I drop my shit and run. Bella Tabon asked me many times why I even cheerlead. Of course, she's complimenting me by saying I should be an athlete instead. Thinking about it, Bella and Darla would get along great. They both give me great advice. Problem is, I'm too much of a bitch to take it. Leave me alone, Keenan, I yell. Can't do that, hottie, he calls back. I cry out when I feel that sudden surge down my back. That motherfucker! I've got to get away from him. I reach the fence and quickly climb over it. I drop just outside the football field. That's when my shoes come apart. When I hear that bastard climbing the fence, I turn around and slam my palms against it to knock him off. Then I run away again. When I'm under the home bleachers, I feel my clothes coming apart. I'm gonna kill Keenan for this. I groan and growl at the pain I'm feeling. My clothes are tatters on the ground now. I'm growing, sprouting hair. Changing. When it's finished, I tighten my fists and roar with all I've got. Where are you, my beautiful flower? I hear Keenan singing. Come on, I'm not gonna hurt you, Danielle. I just want to win your heart. Win my heart? Win my heart? I'll rip yours right out, you son of a bitch. You brought the wolf out of me tonight. You want to play? Let's play. When Keenan's still hunting for me, I spring right out of the bleachers and tackle him on the astroturf of the football field. Keenan cries out when he's flat on his back. I glare right at him and growl as I hold him down with one clawed hand. I'm screaming everything I can at him right now. You'd think I'd learned by now that even though I understand English perfectly in my wolf form, I can never speak it. Believe me, I tried. Many times. All that comes out are growls and roars. Still, I gotta vent my anger somehow, right? Now, I do know for a fact I can go full she-bitch mode on Keenan, and he won't come back like me. I've scratched and bit victims before. I definitely can't pass my curse in traditional werewolf fashion. Good thing, right? Otherwise, I'd have a whole fucking pack to deal with. I lift my prey off the field and look right at him. He just gives me that look, saying he can't believe he's seeing a real live werewolf. Then I finally toss him away from me and roar at him again. He quickly gets up and runs back to the fence where his friends are waiting. When I roar at them, they quickly grab Keenan off the fence and run for it. I could easily jump the fence and be on them, but I don't need to deal with the cops. Besides, I'm no killer. Great. What do I do now? I'm still pissed off as fuck. The next morning, I enter Strickfield High. It took me nearly all night to finally calm down and change back. Darla really loved hearing my story when I returned home to our apartment at Strickfield Cove in my birthday suit. When Darla saw me quickly cover up my naked body, she knew something was wrong. "Normally, you love walking around our apartment naked," she teased. When I told her what had happened, she asked me what I was going to do. "I don't know," I muttered. "Why me? I'm not a prize for anybody." When she gave me that look that told me different, I wanted to smack her. I could never do that to my best friend in the whole world. Anyway, I'm just walking in the main doors when Keenan confronts me again. "I'm so happy to see you, my beautiful flower," he sings. "Oh, what I know about you now." I gulp. "I won't go out with you. Last I checked, I have every right to tell you no." Then I see something in his hands. It's the remains of my t-shirt. He brings the cloth to his nose and sniffs. "You see what you do to me, Danielle?" I shake my head quickly. What does this even mean? Now he comes closer, to where only we can hear each other. "You are such a beautiful creature, no matter what you look like. I'm not stupid. I know what 2 + 2 equals, if you know what I mean." And to make sure he knows I know, he goes, "Ah-ooh." I go to turn away from him, but he won't let me. "One date. Fuck you," I fire back. "Hey, watch your mouth, Danielle Boyd," Principal Matthew Van Diest calls out. I want to tell the principal where to go, but I feel I'm close to where it might trigger another wolf out if I do. "One date," Keenan repeats. "You don't like it? You never have to see me again. Promise." I glare at him. "Fuck you." "Ahoo," he utters again. "Just say yes and your secret is safe with me." Truth is, it would be his word against mine. He never actually saw me change. Also, what are a few tatters gonna prove? Oh, believe me, I'm still pissed off, but... Okay, Keenan. 1 date. I raise my finger. 1. He gives me that sneer again. I only need 1, Danielle. Suddenly, he snatches me into his arms. He doesn't try kissing me, though. Instead, he just sniffs me. He lets me go and looks right at me. "You smell so wonderful. No wonder I want you so bad." Then he gets to our date. "I'll pick you up at your apartment at 6. Shit. Now he knows where I live, too? I am so screwed. I answer the door after Keenan knocks. I thought about dressing in drab clothes. Problem is, I don't own any, and I didn't find anything worth a shit in the Goodwill store. At least, nothing that would fit me. So, I'm wearing sexy clothes, 'cause I'm just that self-centered. Keenan's actually wearing nice clothes too. If anything, he looks more like a preppy kid. I come out and lock the door. Then I turn to him. "Let's get this over with," I mutter. Suddenly realizing how that could be taken, I raise my finger. "Our date." I glare into his eyes. "You will not be fucking me tonight, or ever." He takes another whiff of me. "I don't know if I can honor 1 date, Danielle. I mean, you really smell good. I could smell you every day." But I said one date, and I always keep my promises. So I leave with him. We go into downtown village and do some general hanging out. Turns out he's really into bobbleheads, so we spend some time in Bobbletopia. He further emphasizes he knows my secret by showing me a 1941 Wolfman bobblehead. Then he buys it. After we leave the store, I pull him into a nearby alley to confront him. "Okay, fucker, what's the bet?" "Huh?" Keenan asks. "What bet? You think I don't know you're scoring pussy just to impress your friends at school?" I snap. "I know I'm the one bitch nobody scores, period. So, what's the bet? How much are you getting if you get into my pants?" He smirks and shrugs. "I don't do this for money. I just like women, that's all. But you, Danielle Boyd, are definitely a prize worth winning for sure. Like I said, I want to marry you." I roll my eyes and laugh. "Oh, you want to marry me?" I raise my finger. "That would be a death sentence. I'd be the biggest fucking bitch to you every day. You'd be begging to divorce me, especially when you'd see all my therapy bills. And then there's... the bastard actually has the balls to come in and kiss me. Since we're still just inside this alley, I should be wolfing out and thumping him around for kissing me. But no, I'm just letting him. His hands are on my sides, but he's not actually pinning me to the wall. However, I do smell his testosterone again and know he definitely wants to screw me. That's when I quickly put the brakes on and get him off me. "I told you, you're not getting lucky," I remind him. He doesn't get hostile. "Like I said, Danielle, you have no idea what you do to me. I definitely want you." He raises his finger. "I will win you, fair and square. I will marry you." I give him a bitchy smirk. "Sorry, Keenan, but this date's over. That means I'm officially saying no. I'm not interested in having a boyfriend or lover. Like I said, you'd regret it later in life if you did marry me." He shakes his head quickly. "I won't give up on you. I can't now." Before we can argue further, this car suddenly screeches to a halt. Then this man gets out. He has a baseball bat in his hand and points right at Keenan. "You son of a bitch," he growls. "I know you were the one having an affair with my wife." Now I know who the man is. "You're Jake Rowland. Mrs. Rowland is one of our teachers at Strickfield High." When he sees me, he roars with anger. "You just couldn't stop with my wife, you bastard. What, tainting my wife wasn't good enough for you?" Keenan's keeping his confidence, but putting his hands up in front of him. "Your wife's hot, but I swear I never touched her." I learned to listen to a person's heartbeat since gaining my curse. Keenan's a little scared right now. Thanks to Bella Tabon working with me, I can tell he's telling the truth. He never did sleep with Mrs. Rowland. I step up in front of Keenan. "You don't know for sure, Mr. Rowland. Don't do something you're going to be sorry for later." He ain't listening. "Oh, I know my wife's been sleeping with students at Strickfield High." He points at Keenan. "And you got a reputation, kid. You slept with a few teachers. That's what got you kicked out of Strickfield Academy. I got news for you. Rumors don't just stay in school. And now I'm going to make sure you never take what's not yours, ever again." "I didn't sleep with your wife," Keenan protests, louder and with more fear. Now I know for sure he's telling the truth. I'm still in front of Keenan. "Just back off." Out of my way, you slut! Mr. Rowland yells and shoves me aside. When I try to stop that idiot from cracking Keenan with the bat, I end up catching the blow myself. The force sends me back into the alley. I feel the sudden shock going down my back and know I'm gonna turn she-bitch. Christ, I'm so fucking pissed right now. When the change finishes, I spring out of the alley and snatch the bat away from Mr. Rowland. He gawks when I splinter it. Then I grab him and roar in his face. It's then when the cops arrive. When those pigs start pointing their pea shooters my way, I shove Mr. Rowland right to them. When they see I'm not attacking them, they don't fire at me. When I turn and run off, Keenan's calling after me. Oh, he's gonna catch hell from me once I'm calm again. Sure enough, Keenan finds me at school the next morning. He tells me everything's all good. He's not pressing charges on Mr. Rowland. He also told me Mrs. Rowland got placed on leave pending the outcome of a much-needed investigation. I get Keenan to come to an empty classroom with me. After I shut the door, I tell him what I want to say. You and me are not happening. Go ahead and tell people about me and have fun trying to prove it. Suddenly, Keenan's on me. Again, he's got the balls to kiss me. And again, I let him. I really don't need this shit. When we finish the kiss, he promises me again he will have me. Besides, we never got to finish our date, he says, caressing my cheek. I ease him away from me. And we're not gonna. Again. I am way too much baggage. Also, I won't be one of your conquests. Keenan shows again that he's got balls by kissing me. When this kiss finished, I agree to one more full date, just to be fair. As for how this second date turns out, and what happens during that date, well, that's gonna be a story for another time. And that's our howl-worthy lineup for tonight's Full Moon Fears. Whether it's werewolves, wicked squirrels, or shape-shifting chaos, remember, when the moon is full, it's best to stay indoors. And make sure you're subscribed to Weekly Spooky on your favorite podcasting app, because there's something new and scary every single Wednesday for 6 years and beyond. Until next time, my spookies, stay creepy and maybe don't feed the squirrels.